Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've seen a Chinese film today. A Chinese 3D animated film that's been breaking box office records. It's made $700 million, well, more than $700 million in China alone, which is a record, according to Wikipedia, for an animated film in a single market to make that much money. I think that is most of its worldwide gross as well. It's not as known outside of China, I think. It's called Ne Zha. Ne Zha being the name of the main character, and it's actually a Chinese mythological character. And again, this is according to Wikipedia. The plot is loosely based on the classic novel Investiture of the Gods, which is attributed to Zhu Zhonglin, a Chinese writer from the 1500s. So this is this is like the equivalent of, I suppose, kind of Hollywood movies based on, I don't know, Robin Hood or kind of or mythological figures,
yes.
Or kind of fairy tale figures.
Yes, it's like the gods of Egypt or something like that, right?
Yeah. I had a really bad time for the most part.
I liked it.
The first, it's a couple of hours long, and the first hour far inferior to the second hour, where things picked up. It's for me it was kind of like sub Ice Age kind of fare, really infantile, puerile humour.
I liked it.
Really for kids.
I liked
not all that good looking. I wasn't having a very good time, and obviously it's heavily based on kind of figures that I know nothing about.
Yes.
Didn't know anything about Ne Zha or the rest of the cast of characters, and I don't. And along with that, kind of it has imagery which I do recognise, kind of the kind of way that Chinese dragons are drawn, that sort of thing. But I'm not really familiar with their kind of place in sort of Chinese culture and that sort of thing. I don't know all that much about it. So obviously I'm coming from a place of a lot of ignorance.
So you learned something?
Well, I don't know how much I learned because... you know. But there's obviously a reason that this is resonating so much in China. Put it that way.
I mean, I really liked it. I liked the world it creates. There are some things that sound a bit crude to Western ears, like that form of talking that feels almost like aggressive shouting, right? And then you translate it, and it's like, "Son, sit down" or something, but it feels like murder's about to happen, right? So there's that. There's a kind of humor that it feels like it's almost directed at a subliterate audience, right? But that works nonetheless. It's full of fart jokes and things like that, right? It's crude, right? Some of the humor. It's got one fag joke that the film keeps repeating,
I should clarify, fag joke, not fat joke.
Yeah, fag joke. Yeah, it's kind of what they have is like this really huge, big, beefy giant, right? And then every time a monster appears, he does like this girly yelp, right? So it's obviously like...
It's funny the first time. We both laughed the first time.
Yeah.
And then when it happens the fifth and sixth times, you go, this needs to stop it.
It's quite homophobic. So there is that, right? But that aside, I really liked it. I kind of, I liked the world that it creates. The animation is not the most imaginative, but actually there was, there was several of the fight scenes that I just thought were like wonderful. There
is some quite striking imagery, and most of that, I think, comes along later on in the film, which is where, as I say, I think it started to pick up. There's a kind of huge fight sequence that finishes off the film, and it must be sort of 10 or 15, 20 minutes of a kind of continued and evolving fight that the film kind of climaxes with, which I enjoyed most of, and I think has some real excitement and kind of creativity in it. There are also one or two shots on that beach where, after they fought the water demon, when let me get the characters' names. It's Ne Zha and Give me a moment.
It's like IB or something like that.
Ne Zha and Ao Bing.
Oh, okay, I'll bet.
They meet, and then they play. It's a Chinese game it's sort of a form of hacky sack. It's called Jianji. So it's sort of hacky sack, but played with a kind of shuttlecock type weighted thing. They kick it back and forth and keep it up. And there's a shot of the two of them doing that with the sunset in the background. That was quite beautiful.
I actually think that there are quite a lot of things that are quite beautiful because, as the film progresses and you have fight scenes and so on, the film uses very different kinds of animation, right? So sometimes, like, it just looks like a comic book, a black and white kind of one-dimensional comic book image, right? And so on. I think it's quite inventive.
I think that might be overdoing it. I think what you're thinking of is when you see the painting and the ball going around like a pinball. That's a couple of shots.
Well, I'm just saying, that they use different kinds of animation styles.
But there isn't a lot of... I mean, that was quite striking, but there is... I don't think there's... That's not like a kind of foundational sort of imaginative thing in the film. It's mostly sort of similar looking. But I think the kind of use of smoke and use of colours and lightning and things are quite good looking. And I think also when Ne Zha becomes his kind of adult form, his teenage form, because he has this thing that keeps him as like a toddler or kid. Then he occasionally kind of breaks out of that, becomes his adult form. When he does that and his hair kind of goes up and his eyes turn white and he's kind of surrounded by fire, he has a kind of anime inflected look, rather like Ao Bing does, who is always in that form.
Yeah.
So, and that's quite good fun. And quite
I like that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the theme of the film is very reductive and also kind of ideological. So really, there's a whole message here about, obeying your parents and sacrificing yourself for the family and, and all that stuff.
But then ultimately not doing so. The message ultimately becomes about choosing your fate.
Well...
And choosing who you are supposed to be yourself.
Well, that's another strand, yeah. So I think it's true that there is that message about, that you create your own fate, which again, is, well, I suppose it's kind of banal, but it's interesting in a Chinese context.
Well, it also struck me as quite an American message.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Because there's a film coming up...
It's banal in an American context, but interesting in a Chinese one.
Right. So there's a film coming up which we saw a trailer for the other day at the Mac. It's a live-action Chinese film. I don't remember the title of it. But I remember saying, this looks quite good. Thing about a mother who has cancer, and it sounds like the family decides not to tell her. It's a film with this Awkwafina in it, who was in what's that Asian film we saw about the really rich Chinese people in Singapore?
I can't remember.
Do you remember that film? I can't remember the name of the film, but basically...
But I remember the film.
Right,
yeah.
she was in that, Awkwafina was in that, and now she's in this upcoming Chinese film, and she's a kind of American-Chinese character who obviously is kind of at odds with her parents. And there was a line just from the trailer that struck me, which was one of the older characters saying to her something like, your generation thinks it's all about you, you're far too selfish, you have to live for the family in Chinese culture. Something that's the difference between Western and Eastern culture.
Yeah.
And so that struck me just in the context of this, as the message of this seems very Western taken in that context. Live for yourself, decide who you want to.
But I don't think the message is live for yourself, and this is where I think you're conflating the two things.
Okay.
So I think on the one hand the message is saying you construct your own fate, but on the other hand, the message of family. What's the thing about the runes, the reading of the runes that protect people?
You can use
the father.
The father wants to use this. He knows that his son is going to be killed in 3 years by a lightning strike, and he's able, with these runes, these kind of leaflet things...
He sacrifices his own life for his child.
Yeah, to take the bolt for his son.
That's right. And at the end, the son tears up the rune and basically decides to sacrifice himself, for the greater good. So actually, that's quite a traditional message, and that's not unlike, what's important is the unit and the family and the larger social unit. It's not just about yourself, because he goes to die, right?
Yeah.
So those two things coexist in this film, I think, in ways that are very interesting.
Yeah, and that's certainly a way of looking at that. I mean, I took that to some degree as that is kind of both of those themes melding actually quite organically, because there's no way of taking it, which is to say that he takes it on himself because that's his choice. Because if he were to obey his family there, he would let his dad...
I know, but I think that's the way ideology works. It's your choice to sacrifice yourself for your family, right? It's still... The theme is still, the value is.
But is he doing it for his family or for himself? Is he taking it on because that he feels that's his? I don't know.
Well, it's very explicit when he tears up the protection that his father has given him, which is basically his father giving up his life for him, and tears it up, right? Kind of, that's a selfless gesture, and that's a gesture of self-sacrifice. Now, kind of, and you can see, I mean, one of the things that the film is very interesting is that, both the demon and the virtuous, dragon are both very attractive, except actually kind of, the demon child ends up being the hero of the story rather than the virtuous anime, Pearl, right?
Yeah, so we should maybe just quickly actually say who these characters are. The film starts off with this sort of prequel story from 3 years before most of the action, where something called the Chaos Pearl is being... It has two halves. It's split into these two halves. One of them is a spirit pearl, which is a kind of good half, and the other is a demon pill, which is a bad half. And these things kind of represent good and evil. And the demon pill is red and is represented by fire, or kind of related to fire, and the spirit pearl is blue and related to ice. Through one kind of mechanism or another, the demon pill ends up sort of being released and going into the unborn child of this. Are they like an emperor and empress, or they seem to be leaders?
Or a lord, anyway.
That's right. And the child is born, and it's a demon, and this entire town is terrified of it.
So instead of being, this virtue reincarnated in this child, it's actually evil reincarnated in this child, because somebody has just stolen one pill and left the other.
Yeah.
So,
and the spirit pearl, on the other hand, is stolen by this quote unquote baddie, who takes it down to a kind of dragon lair where these dragons have to stay underground as the jailers of a kind of a load of evil beings, right? And they clearly kind of resent this role, but that's what they do. And in order to ascend into heaven, kind of vicariously, the leader of all these dragons infuses an egg of his with the spirit pearl. So the spirit pearl kind of is infused into a sort of bad child, a dragon child, becomes good, or has an essence of goodness.
Yes. So that's a nice kind of parallel, right? Like,
and Ne Zha is the demon child of a human.
Yeah, so good people end up with a demon child, bad end up with like a virtuous child. That's the film is balancing these things kind of throughout.
And I quite like the idea with the dragon people, or the dragon, people, I suppose, that they're frustrated by our being's, their child's goodness. They try and train us out of him.
Yes.
And they can't really. I quite like that sort of, there's just a relationship between them that I quite enjoyed.
Yes. And actually the other thing that's interesting is that in a way what changes the narrative is not just like individual will, but also friendship. Right? So it's the friendship between these two boys that makes them do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do on their own.
Yeah, so they meet on that beach after that this water demon has been sort of vanquished, and they become friends, and then there's this reiteration throughout the rest of the film that I'm your only friend and I'm your only friend, and they share a kind of intimate connection almost immediately, which I felt by the point that all that action was happening towards the end was becoming kind of confused. I think it seemed to me, at least, I was kind of losing track of exactly what everyone's motivations were. So, for instance, Al Bing, who we've seen up until this point, has kind of, despite his parents' and community's intentions for him and wishes for him, does have this streak of goodness that can't be overcome. So when he takes all this water up into the sky over this village where everybody lives and freezes it, intending to drop it onto the village and kill everybody, the question is sort of how much of that is him, how much of that is him listening to everyone around him, but it never becomes that explicit or clear.
Well, for me it was, in the sense that, what he's doing is being filial, right? He's got an obligation to his father and to his own community, so, and I forget what it was, but it was something that sparked the change, right? Because, he's going to die anyway, the demon child, right? He's fated to die. So, But anyway, I think there's a moment of choice there where, the son decides to be filial, really. And then kind of that's overridden by the two realizing they're like two halves of the same coin and then holding hands in a battle, basically.
Yeah, certainly Ne Zha has an influence on our Bing.
Yes.
Ne Zha is the one who declares that you don't have to be who everyone says you should be. You should choose your own fate, and
that's right.
That's what changes our Bing's mind.
Okay, there you go. So anyway, and for me, I think the test is so. I wasn't aware of this, but when the film finished, I was beginning to walk out, and then Mike pointed out to me that there was an alert like stay for.
Yeah, the film comes up with a thing that says "Don't leave." There's an end credit sequence.
That's right.
And then you see it, and then there's more credits, and it goes, "No, don't you dare leave." There's another one.
So all of this to say is that there will be a sequel, and that actually this sequel is going to be like part of the world of this novel.
It certainly seems that they are building a kind of Marvel-esque universe.
Exactly,
as everyone is.
So and I think for me the test of the film is, would I go see those other films? And the answer is a quick yes, I would. I want to see them.
Yeah,
I do.
Okay, yeah. I wouldn't.
Really?
I did like it more as it went on, but I still found it really puerile and hard to watch for a good hour.
You're just going to be stuck in this Western rut. Closed off.
I don't know. In a way, it felt like a bad imitation of Western crap. For a long
I didn't
time.
think so. I think, a lot of the ideas were, like I said, were different. The relationships were different. I mean, one of the things that was really interesting, and I need to think about more, but, the way that the villages were depicted was a real problem, really. Because they were all depicted as kind of, as crude and ignorant and prone to violence and needing to be saved and controlled. It's a real worrisome representation of the people or the crowd, right? So
as it relates to Ne Zha, it makes sense, I think, because the idea is that he's been treated with nothing but fear his entire life, and everybody fears him. And actually, it's only in that scene on the beach where someone treats him with love and kind of, or at least not fear, for the first time, and he's able to kind of open up emotionally to someone else.
Well, on the other hand, he is terrorizing these people and destroying their homes.
Well, no, but I don't think it's quite that simple, because they say right at the start, just as he's been born and kind of comes out and ignites for the first time and scares everybody. One of the characters says it's not his fault. He's a victim here. No, he didn't mean for this to happen to him. No one asked him. No one asked, did he want to have a demon push into him? So there is that element. But, I mean, you are right, there is something also incarnately evil to him.
Yes.
Which is what this...
But also the price of saying it's not his fault, he's born this way. I mean, that's okay if you're not harming anyone, but he basically terrorizes the whole village for 3 whole years. I mean, and yet, kind of, what you're seeing in a way, or who you're asked to empathize, is kind of with him, rather than the village, And I think there's something kind of... There's a way in which this film represents the masses, the crowd, the people, that is iffy to me.
Yeah, the terrorization that he upon which he bestows the village for 3 years, we don't really see, but we're told it's along the lines of bullying, basically, kind of aggressive. But he seems to be like the town bully, as opposed to well, I mean, that seems to be kind of what it is. And so you have that scene with the kids saying, let's get our own back on him. We've set up all these traps as to how we can catch him and be cruel to him. And they say, God, this sounds too cruel. And they say, well, he beats us up all the time. Any chance we have to be nasty to him, we'll be as nasty as we can.
Yes.
But it does that does seem to be the sort of... It seems to be on like a human level of bullying as opposed to a
well,
demonic.
at that point in the film, yes. Though actually, I think there's something also interesting, because... the whole laugh in the film or whatever is actually when he turns the tables on them, and everything that they've desired for him, they end up suffering. Which is, a kind of... It's kind of unimaginable, I think, in an American film, that you make, the crowd, the police, the people, pay for that, or so I think there's something kind of highly questionable there. But that's just at the beginning. Afterwards, he goes on to like tear entire villages apart, right?
Well, what you're talking about, when he burns the village down, he's doing so in pursuit of that demon, that water demon. So he does so kind of carelessly, but I don't think actually intentionally.
No, but part of the lesson in the film that you get repeated all the time is, that he's not conscious of any of that, right? And the price of it is that these people lose their homes, and the village gets destroyed or whatever, right? So whilst he's not setting out to do it, that is the end result of his actions.
Yeah, but I think that there is a case to be made that the film is suggesting that he should be treated with more kindness or understanding, that he doesn't actually entirely know. I mean, he doesn't know that he's this demon thing.
Well, he's been told he's the Pearl.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he has been told he's the other one. But so when he's playing Jiangji right at the start with his mum, who he says he never gets to play with, but she says, "Let's play this one time," and then it turns out he's so much more powerful than he knows, and he kind of kicks it to her, and it ends up shooting her into a wall. And he doesn't know how destructive he is. That's kind of the start of it. Which then goes along to that thing with burning the village down. It's a consequence of who he is and the way he is, and it is accidental and unintentional. And you're right that it hurts people, but
you're very sympathetic to him.
Well, I think that's fair enough.
So
he doesn't know who he is.
Sorry?
He doesn't know who he is.
No, he doesn't know who he is. We know who he is, and actually, I think he's quite a fun character, and I really like. That the hero of this animated film is someone like mischievous, well, more than mischievous, kind of, with a streak of evil, right? Like, and energy and so on. I think, the film, for me, it's very, very entertaining. It's often quite funny. And some of the animation is really, really good. I look forward to seeing more of it.
Is that it?
Well, that's
it seems like I've said more good things about it than you have, and I really didn't like it.
What do you mean?
I found it incredibly boring.
Well, I wasn't bored at all. I was laughing throughout, and I think so was the audience. So, maybe caught you in a bad mood.
No, it didn't catch me in a bad mood. I was looking forward to it. I genuinely was. Because what happened was, we came out to see The Lion King, the 1994 one, because I noticed on Cineworld's website, happened to be on, I was like, let's go and see it. And you, very kindly, said, oh, fine. And then we went to it, and it turned out it was actually the 2019 one, some problem with Cineworld's thing, so we didn't stick around for that. And then we saw that Ne Zha was playing, which you'd mentioned not long ago. I would like to see that, and we never got around to it.
Yes.
So we went to see it, and I had been looking forward to it. This kind of big, popular Chinese animation sounded interesting.
Well, yes, it sounded very interesting to me. To be honest, I thought it was a live-action film, because I've been saying for the last 2 or 3 weeks, so we must see this. And the only reason why is because, it's very rare to have a Chinese film playing in the big chains here. So, that to me was a reason enough to see it. But also that I'd heard it was such a high-grossing film, so all the more reason. I think it was the most popular film in China last year, the most popular Chinese film in China. So I was keen to see it for those reasons. I didn't realize it was going to be animated, and
I thought it would be 2D animated as opposed to 3D. So
right,
neither of our expectations were quite met.
Yes, though I had a very good time, I must say. And like I said, if I look forward to seeing the rest of the sequels. So I think there's a lot of things that, at least to my mind, are quite questionable, and some of them are maybe attributable to cultural difference, and some of them are just questionable. But yes, I don't know. I'm thinking, why am I so willing to forgive the film's constant homophobic one-note joke, constantly relayed. And I suppose, and I'm not sure really, I think it has to do with, the guys used for a laugh, It doesn't feel mean-spirited, you know.
No.
Though, you know...
It's just immature.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is that kind of, you know, crude, you know, childish humor. And that kind of is not just with the fag jokes, but it's also with the fart jokes, and it's the use of the pig and the fat guy. Like, my God, you know, you can really go to town, you know, if you're easily offended on this film.
And they're not all terrible. Like, one or two of those fart jokes were quite funny.
Yes.
You know, and there were times when, times when they did make me laugh. You know, when the guy farts and the other guy breathes it in, thinking that he's going to get one up on him, actually breathes in his fart and kind of faints and vomits. Like, that was funny.
There are a lot of bits that are funny.
There are times when, but for the most part, I didn't like all that stuff. I liked the joke very early on, the crystal thing, the chaos stone, whatever it's called, where the two halves are joined together still at the start, is kept inside this sort of lotus flower arrangement shield thing, and for whatever reason, the character needs to open it. And in so doing, he has to kind of operate like a kind of touchscreen safe combination,
like an Apple thing, actually.
He gets the thing wrong, and it flashes up red, and he goes, "Oh no, I've only got 4 tries left before it locks me out for 10 years." That's right. So, you know, that was quite good fun, and then he accesses it actually with his fingerprint instead.
Yes,
I quite like that. You know, that was quite inventive. And that had a ring of sort of some of those Disney jokes. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there are times when Disney does similar jokes where it sort of combines the fairy tale stuff with some modern reference and makes sense of it. It had that thing going for it. You know, there were jokes that really worked, and there were kind of emotional beats that really worked. That scene on the beach, I enjoyed on an emotional level. Like I felt, you know, kind of good for the characters, and I felt they're sort of finding each other and all that sort of thing I liked. So it has its moments. And by the time it was getting into that huge final fight, where things were kind of moving quite fluidly, and there's all this stuff about like this ring that is around Ne Zha's neck that kind of restricts his powers, and then he puts it on his wrist, and so that kind of restricts his powers a bit less. And that's not something that's been set up beforehand, that, you know, if I put it here, then that kind of gives me enough use of my powers without going crazy. But it just kind of makes sense, and you go with it because it's moving quite fluidly. I didn't mind that sort of stuff.
In the sequel, it'll be on his toes.
And that's and I suppose that's something that I might ordinarily take against. I mean, it's the sort of thing that I took against when we saw It Chapter 2 the other day. The kind of immediately towards the end of the film, the bringing up a rule that is immediately put into action without any set up beforehand, just because it makes the film easier, sort of thing.
Yes, though I think it makes sense here.
Well, yeah, it makes a certain amount of sense. Like I say, I kind of went with it. But there is a bit of that. But I kind of felt like, yeah, I don't know. It was just something. I suppose it was also kind of quite chaotic and loud and bright at the end. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, kind of sensually. Sensually.
I like that sensorially.
Sensorially, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I did kind of enjoy. And I suppose it's the sort of thing that you might look down upon if it were a Marvel movie. Say you go, oh, it's just noise and stuff signifying nothing. Maybe it's the bigotry of low expectations, going, you know, well, I'll let the Chinese one get away with it. Maybe that's the same with the gay joke, you know.
I don't know. I just think it's a different kind of movie, really. So, you know, yesterday we saw this really great movie, the kind of
Transit. This is.
Yeah, Transit, that seemed to get richer and richer in your mind, and, you know, as you talked about, the more you talked about it, the more richer it became, really. This is not that kind of movie, right? You know, so I think thematically it was really not very interesting. I did find it funny. I did think the action sequences worked. It's kind of an interesting insight into another culture. I'm very interested in seeing what, you know, China comes up with next in relation to animation, right? Kind of, you know, Asia has a whole history of animation. I was very interested, for example, to see like Hungarian names in the credit sequences, that they offshoot some of the work there. I don't know. I'd be curious to find out if there's some of that. But this is a big budget, glossy, animated film that does not come from America, and I think that makes it inherently interesting to me.
The audience that you mentioned enjoying the film, I think, apart from us, seem to be primarily Chinese.
Right.
And as you said, the film got good reactions. I mean, I didn't have the confidence to go to any of them and say, and what did you think?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do that.
But you see, that's something sad, really, that, that people are not more curious.
Well, I was curious, but I wasn't.
No, I don't mean you. I mean, the audiences in Birmingham are not curious enough to go see a Chinese film.
That's what you mean.
That is like the highest grossing film of the year, and that is an animated film. You would think that they would be interested, that there would be an interest there. Just by virtue of what it is,
Well, to be fair, I mean, there's so many kind of Urdu and Hindi films that go through Cineworld, and we've never seen one of them. We never go and see
We should
those.
go. I sometimes go.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I never have.
So, I mean, kind of this is what the culture here offers, that it's outside of the mainstream, and it's kind of a look into another culture, and it's interesting. I went to see, so, these releases are kind of obviously tied to population. There was also, there was maybe a year or two where 2 or 3 nights a week they would show a Polish film as well at Cineworld, and I saw some of those.
Right.
Though, my God, kind of, they were abysmal. But, kind of something so huge. I'm surprised that there isn't more of a curiosity. Celia and I went to see some Hindi films, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, she was very interested in Bollywood, wasn't she?
So it's just kind of surprising that there were so few people there, really, that, that people are not more curious. And, just off the top of my head, I wonder if it's a Brexit thing as well. There's this shutting down of things, and kind of, a lack of curiosity about the rest of the world. And even, a kind of, a lack of curiosity about other places in themselves, and a lack of curiosity even in terms of how those places view us here. So I think, anyway, I'm just talking out loud. I'm thinking out loud. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it's something else. But it was very marked that there were, we were the only non...
People of colour.
Yeah.
I think to talk about it as a quote-unquote Brexit thing is probably implies the wrong sort of causal relationship. It's like it's not because of Brexit that people aren't interested in exploring other cultures. It's the fact that people aren't interested in exploring other cultures in this country, and that leads to a bit of a Brexit mentality.
It's a loop, isn't it?
We don't, just generally speaking in this country, we don't engage with
no, it's very difficult to see foreign language cinema here as is, and
yeah, we can go overboard with that. Like there are places. In the last 2 days we've seen 2 foreign language films.
It's just not comparable. I went to a cinema in Madrid, and I've been to Buenos Aires this summer and so on. And you go to the art cinema there. They're showing Chinese films and Polish films and Spanish films and and British films and so the range is just not comparable. We have very little on offer. Right?
Well, that's fair enough, but it's still
not.
It's far from impossible.
Demonstrated in terms, if you just see we've done 169 podcasts or something, right?
This will be 170th.
Okay, so this will be our 170th. It would be interesting to see what percentage of them is non-British UK.
Non-British and American.
Yeah.
Shall I look? Because I can get the list up.
Yeah, okay, get the list up.
I will do a little tally. Shall I do every single one we've done, or just the new releases?
No, go through the whole thing. We were talking about, in the context of 170 films, how many have we,
right, sure.
How many are foreign?
Okay, so...
Okay.
So 23, 13.53. So that's 23 films or 23 podcasts out of 170 podcasts, including this one, makes it a percentage of 13.5%.
Yes, which is a very poor show. Which
is not good enough. And over the next couple of months, we'll improve that a little bit because of everything that I've booked to see at the Mac and the Electric. Though not everything is current. So like Ring, the Blue Pearl,
Blue Angel.
Blue Angel, sorry. Are not current releases. They're being brought back. But yeah, you're right. It's something. It's always something to kind of keep in mind.
Well, I mean, my concern really is, I talk to my friends elsewhere, and they really do have a common film culture. It's like, the films that are nominated or are up for the award at Cannes or, Venice or the Havana Film Festival or, there's like these major film festivals around the world, and at the end of it comes a body of maybe like 15 or 20 films from all the rest of the world, right? And almost by virtue of, being chosen, they are normally like kind of very, very interesting, right? I mean, it is like, because if you get one German film, it's like, amongst the top 2 or 3 German films of the year, or So, and it's just surprising that like we do so little of them. So, again, kind of, so few of them make it here, right? So I don't want it to be just like me self-flagellating. It's not just our fault. There is very little on offer in Birmingham that is foreign, and very little that they cover the major film festivals, so you normally get the Cannes film winner, but you won't get the winner of like San Sebastian or Lebanon or something, right?
They do make it here. It's not like there's nothing on offer, and it is possible to see more than I think we do, and we should. But so I think some self-flagellation is in order. But you're right that we don't have the same culture of showing non-native films or non-American films as other countries do around Europe or South America.
I think that was my point, and it was brought back to me very quickly because I went to the Golden Cinema, and the offering was just so impressive. There was the New Ceylan film from Turkey, which was wonderful. There was a Chinese noir, which was just like, fascinating. And what you find is that, you end up going to the cinema, like in these foreign countries, to see things that really would, like, a little while back would have just been shown as a matter of course here, that still make it to London, right? Like, you could see these things if you're in London, but that actually don't really travel in the rest of the country. So, kind of, platforms like MUBI become a kind of a lifesaver in that sense. But they tend to show kind of particular films as well. I mean,
they show strands and things like that.
And it's very well curated. But, if you want to catch, like, I don't know, let's say there was an international critics poll of the best, the best 20 films of, the last year. Well, only 2 or 3 of them would have been American, and it's quite logical, right? Like, it's the rest of the world, right? So it kind of bothers me that we don't get more of an opportunity to see them. Yeah, because that was not always the case. If you see, programs of what was showing in the West End in the 70s, it would have been full of foreign films, So, yeah, I think the culture has gotten narrower. To be fair, there are other places to see it, like there are platforms. So if you include like the BFI platforms and so on, maybe it's easier to see these films than it ever was, right? But they're not at a cinema.
Yeah, I know that's the one thing about MUBI. Like, it's fantastic that MUBI, it is the best streaming service for a cinephile. It has the best, kind of range, and it is curated in an intelligent way and offers really interesting stuff. But it's not a cinema.
Yeah.
And I always want to see something at the cinema if I possibly can.
I think I'm going to...
Which is why when films even films that like Fight Club or The Lion King from '94, which we thought we were going to see today, when they come round, which are not kind of the greatest art films, but I would like to see them at the cinema, because that's such a different experience to watching them on a telly, and just quickly while we're still here, the film I was thinking of earlier with Awkwafina was Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes.
Which we spoke about, which we quite liked. And the film that's upcoming, which I want to see, is The Farewell.
Right.
Which we got a trailer for at the Mac, like I say, yesterday, and looked really, really good.
Yeah.
So, looking forward to that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube to listen to. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter. @eavesdropmovies is the handle. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Righto. Thank you very much for listening.
Cheerio.